What's going on YouTube? Welcome to another Season 7 League of Legends Champion Guide. Today, I'm going to be covering Jhin, the Virtuoso.
I am at my best only during the performance.
Let's kick this guide off by looking at Jhin's pros and cons. So first, he's an AD carry that has pretty strong lane presence due to the traps from his E ability. With his traps, he's going to be able to toss them around the lane and the river to watch for ganks coming from the jungler, and of course zone the bot lane from certain areas of the lane. Jhin, of course, is a champion with a very strong long-range ultimate that's great for helping his team engage and sniping people from a very long distance. He's got really good scaling because of his passive and very high range on all of his abilities. He's got really good objective control because of his long ranges and his traps, and very high attack damage, which yet again comes from his passive. Jhin, however, is a champion with very low mobility. He doesn't have a built-in escape at all, but at least he gets a little bit of bonus movement speed. Jhin is also a champion with weak self-peel. Sure, his W can crowd control, but it's really hard to land on somebody jumping on top of you. Jhin also has a really slow attack speed because of how his passive works. He will instead have a lot of attack damage, so will still do a lot of damage, but last hitting may be troublesome for some players in the early game. And last here, Jhin is somewhat skill shot reliant. His W ability is very important to land since it can crowd control, and his ultimate does a fair amount of damage, so landing these 4 shots also very important. For my Masteries, I go 18 Ferocity and 12 Resolve, grabbing Warlord's Bloodlust as my Keystone Mastery. Gone are the days of taking Deathfire Touch on Jhin. Warlord's Bloodlust will add some much needed mobility to Jhin, and the sustain of course is really solid as well, and it definitely outshines Deathfire Touch. For the rest of your Masteries, you pretty much focus on getting as much damage as possible on the Ferocity side, and some nice increased tankiness and sustain in the Resolve side. It's also perfectly viable to go 12 Cunning instead if you want that increased damage to minions and whatnot, but I do think 12 Resolve is definitely superior. For your runes, you want to go for either Lethality or AD reds, Armor yellows, Magic resist blues, and Attack damage quins. I'll pretty much always go for a Lethality build on Jhin, so I'll pretty much always take Lethality reds as well, but attack damage are very viable as well. Of course, you will want some sort of attack damage on Jhin, so you will pick that up in your quints just so you can last hit a little bit better and do more damage in trades. Then, like usual on an AD carry, you want to pick up the armor and the magic resist just so you're a little bit more durable in the bot lane and you don't take an absolute shit ton of damage. For your summoner spells, you want to stick with the normal AD carry setup and get Flash and Heal. Flash is a 100% requirement on Jhin since he's a squishy AD carry and it can be used to save your life throughout the game multiple times. You even have the option of using it offensively to snipe somebody from a very long distance with your Deadly Flourish. I've also flashed forward and finished off low health enemies countless times with my 4th shot. There's like no counterplay to it, and it does an absolute ton of damage. Now heal is also going to be a requirement because it can be used to save both yourself and your teammates. The bonus movement speed on activation is also great for escaping or chasing if you do need that extra speed boost. Now let's move on to your abilities, starting with your passive Whisper, which is great for its added damage and mobility. Now there's a lot to this passive, but let's start with the first part, Death in 4 Acts. Jhin's basic attacks use ammunition, and his attack speed cannot be improved except growth by level up. Jhin's attack speed growth is classified as base attack speed. Jhin can attack 4 times before having to reload for 2.5 seconds, and does so automatically after 10 seconds of neither attacking nor using an ability. The 4th attack is guaranteed to critically strike, dealing between 15 and 25% of the target's missing health bonus physical damage. The 4th attack will critically strike against structures, but deals 44% reduced damage and does not apply bonus physical damage. Now I'll be talking about the attack speed on the second part in a second, but the main thing you need to note here is the 4 shots and having to reload. This low attack speed and the fact that you have 4 shots makes him a pretty clunky AD carry, but at least these shots are going to do some massive damage, especially the 4th one. Since the 4th shot's based on the target's missing health, it does some pretty high damage and is great for finishing people off. Like I said, I flashed forward and finished off people with the 4th shot countless times. The second part of your passive is called Every Moment Matters. Jhin's critical strikes grant him 10% plus 4% per 10% bonus attack speed, bonus movement speed for 2 seconds, but his total critical damage is reduced by 25%. Jhin also gains between 2 and 40% based on level, plus 4% per 10% critical strike chance, plus 2.5% per 10% bonus attack speed, AD as bonus attack damage. So this part here makes buying attack speed items perfectly fine on Jhin. You'd kind of think at first that buying attack speed is a waste because it doesn't actually change your attack speed, but you will get a bunch of bonus attack damage because of this part of the passive. Therefore, I pretty much always build a rapid fire cannon on Jhin. It will give me some nice damage because of this passive, and having that increased range on an attack is pretty fantastic. Of course, since Jhin is a rather immobile champion, having this bonus movement speed whenever you crit is also going to be fantastic. Your Q ability is Dancing Grenade, and this is fantastic for poking and last hitting a bunch of minions. When activated, Jhin launches a canister at the target enemy, dealing physical damage. Dancing Grenade bounces to up to 3 additional enemies beyond the first, with each kill it performs increasing its total damage by 35%. So as I previously mentioned, this is fantastic for farming and poking the enemy champions. The best scenario for this ability is when you have 3 low minions and the enemy champion standing right beside them. Use this grenade so it bounces to those 3 minions, kills them all, increasing its damage, and then it bounces to the enemy champion, doing a massive chunk of damage. If you can pull this off and you have some decent items, this can do, no kidding, like half of the AD carry's health. I've had it where just a dancing grenade combined with a forced shot has killed an AD carry. Therefore, in the lane phase, try to farm with this ability as much as possible, but whenever you can, try to bounce it onto the enemy so you do some nice poke damage as well. Your W is Deadly Flourish, and this is your long-range crowd control ability that does some pretty decent damage as well. Passively, enemy champions damaged by Jhin's basic attacks, his allies, or inside a blooming Lotus Trap are marked for 4 seconds. When activated, Jhin fires a shot in the target direction, stopping at the first enemy champion it hits, dealing physical damage. Deadly Flourish deals 75% damage to minions along the way. Damaging a caught-out champion roots them and grants Jhin bonus movement speed. So this here is a really strong ability because it does have a 3000 range and it does crowd control, but you have to remember that somebody has to actually hit the enemy champion in order for you to be able to crowd control them. Now this also does damage to minions, so you can also use it in the lane phase to lower minions and then use your Q ability to help clean them up. The best part of the ability, however, is the fact that it does crowd control, and it does have a scaling duration, so you definitely want to put points into the ability, but it's not as strong as your Q. Your E ability is Captive Audience, and this is where your traps come from that do damage and slow the enemy champion. Passively, Jhin summons a Blooming Lotus Trap under every enemy champion he kills. When activated, Jhin places a Lotus Trap at the target location that lasts for 2 minutes. The Lotus Trap blooms if an enemy walks over it, revealing all enemies caught inside for 4 seconds. Blooming Lotus Traps slow all enemies inside by 35% for 2 seconds before detonating, dealing magic damage to all enemies caught in the explosion. Now you do have more than enough time to walk out of this trap if you do run over it, but you can use your W ability to CC them so they can't actually move, and they will take the damage. It does have a nice ratio, but it's not very reliable damage unless you can crowd control them in it. The revealing part is definitely the best part of the ability, however, because you can toss it in the bushes and river and watch for people coming in for ganks. It's going to give you some really nice lane control, so make sure you're dropping your traps whenever you do have them available. Your ultimate is Curtain Call, and it's great for helping your team engage or to snipe off low health enemies. On first cast, Jhin channels for 10 seconds and can reactivate Curtain Call up to 4 times. So on those reactivations, Jhin fires in the target direction that stops at the first enemy champion it collides with, revealing them, dealing physical damage to all enemies hit, and slows by 80%. Curtain Call's damage is increased by 2.5% for every 1% of the target's missing health, and the final shot critically strikes for 100% times 1 plus bonus critical damage, increased damage. So there's 2 primary ways I like to use this ability, to either slow the enemy champion so my team can engage, or to finish off low health enemies. If the enemy team is rather mobile, then I'll primarily use it as a way for my team to get in there. The 80% slow makes it pretty easy for your team to catch up, considering you can do it 4 times. The damage is increased by the target's missing health, however, so if you want to do as much damage as possible with the ability, then you want to use it as an execute. Either way, since it does have a 3500 range, make sure you use it from a safe distance. You don't have to be anywhere near the enemy champions. For your skill order, you first want to put a point into your ultimate whenever you can at 6, 11, and 16. You'll then want to focus on maxing your Q ability Dancing Grenade first. It's really solid at clearing minion waves and poking the enemy champions. You'll then want to max your W ability second because it has a scaling crowd control duration and does some pretty decent damage. This of course means you want to max your E ability last. Just make sure you take an early point in it at level 4 so you can actually drop traps around the lane and watch for ganks and zone people from certain areas of the lane. Alright, now let's look at a couple of your best support synergies, and first up is Thresh. Thresh is a champion that brings some decent crowd control to the lane, and whenever he lands one you can follow up with your W, get a chain root, and go for some damage. This lane definitely lacks some sustain, but as long as Thresh can land some death sentences, the lane should be fine. He's also a champion that's pretty decent at peeling, which is fantastic with a Jhin because of the lack of mobility. Next up I have Taric. He's a fantastic pick with Jhin due to his crowd control and his peeling. As long as you can land a stun on the enemy champions, Jhin will be able to follow up with his W, and you'll be able to do a lot of damage. In really bad situations, Taric can use his ultimate to save Jhin and allow Jhin to get off all of his damage. He also has a heal which is great for lane sustain. It's not the best one out there, but some heal is better than no heal. Next here I have Maokai, who yet again is a champion with some fantastic peeling and excellent crowd control. Whenever Maokai uses his point-and-click stun twisted advance, you can follow up with your W and easily chain crowd control and do a massive amount of damage, since you both do some pretty significant damage. Maokai's ultimate's actually fantastic with Jin's as well, since Jhin can slow so it actually hits, or he can root people so Jhin can easily land his shots and do all of his damage. And finally we have Janna. She's a much more passive champion than all the other ones, but her peeling is just so incredibly fantastic. If somebody manages to get on top of Jhin, she can help him survive with her shields, and of course has a ton of peeling to get people actually off of him. Her shield adds a ton of attack damage on top of her AD carry as well, and with Jhin, his autos already hit hard, and they're going to hit even harder. If you're with a support champion with crowd control during the lane phase like a Thresh, then you should be trying to use your Deadly Flourish to chain crowd control with him, so make sure you keep it available. You'll also want to be dropping the Lotus Traps from your captive audience to provide some lane control. It can be used to zone the enemy out of certain areas of the lane, and can be used to watch for ganks coming from the river. Other than that, you'll just want to be farming and trying to bounce your Dancing Grenade onto the enemy. Pay attention to how many shots you have left so you don't miss CS. Also, if you can, try to hit the enemy champions with your force shot as much as possible, so your trades are going to be really effective. You'll also want to be auto-attacking minions so you can bounce your Dancing Grenade so it kills multiple and the damage goes through the roof. Before a team fight starts, you'll want to drop your Lotus Traps around the area that you're going to be fighting in. If anybody steps into one, make sure you crowd control them with your Deadly Flourish so they take the damage from the Lotus Trap. Next, you're going to have to decide how exactly you're going to use your Curtain Call. It's great for both opening the fight so your team can engage from the slow that it does provide, or you can use it to finish off low health enemies trying to run away from you. If the enemy team has some pretty decent mobility, then I'll usually use it as a way to help the team engage, but it's also really solid for finishing off the enemy champions because it does do % missing health damage. Next, unless you are very far ahead, you'll want to try to avoid 1v1s as much as you can. Something like a Vayne or Lucian will definitely destroy you in a 1v1, so try not to 1v1 them, be a team fighter. Next, we're going to look at some of your hardest matchups, and we're going to kick it off like usual with frigging Draven. He's a champion that's really strong at the moment, and he can bully pretty much any AD carry in the early and the mid game. Play more passively than usual, try to use your Q to farm, and if you can, bounce it onto him to trade some damage for free. As long as you can hit him, you have the option of landing your W and then going for some free damage. You're definitely a much stronger team fighter in the late game, so your main goal is just to make it to the late game and outscale him. Next up I've got Kog'Maw, who's definitely a champion that outscales you in the late game, so try not to make it there, end it in the early and mid game. If you can rush a Yumu's pretty early, you're going to definitely have a massive power spike on Kog'Maw, and you need to go for kills. He's a champion that also really lacks mobility, so as long as your support champion can hit some form of crowd control on him, you can easily follow up with your W and then kill his ass. Do not go to the late game. Next up I've got Miss Fortune, who's pretty ridiculous right now with the lethality changes. She's just like Draven in the fact that she's a big time lane bully in the early and mid game, and usually winning trades for you is going to be pretty hard. As long as your team can avoid her ultimate in the late game, you guys should be fine, you'll definitely do a lot more damage. She has some okay mobility, but it's not the best out there, so as long as you can land your W on her, then you want to go for the damage. Last here I've got another really strong late game team fighter, Twitch. You want to play this matchup similar to a Kog'Maw, you're much better in the early and mid game with a lethality build, so try to destroy him early on. He has really bad mobility, so try to chain crowd control with your support champion, and destroy him before he gets to the late game. If you guys unfortunately get to the late game, make sure you're not clumped up because his ultimate will completely destroy you. Alright, now let's finish off this guide with our item build, which starts with either a Doran's Blade, Health Potion, and a Warding Totem, or a Doran's Shield, Health Potion, and a Warding Totem. In most cases, I will pick up that Doran's Blade, but if I'm against a really strong early game champion like Miss Fortune or Draven, I will go for the Shield. Now you have two main core builds, and there's the lethality build and the crit build. For the lethality build, you want to go for Yumu's, Duskblade, and Rapid Fire Cannon. After the lethality changes, this is definitely the stronger core build in my opinion, but the crit one is still pretty decent. You'll have a bunch of lethality and attack damage, and some really nice attack speed and crit from the Rapid Fire Cannon as well, with obviously that really strong passive. For the crit build, you instead go for the Essence Reaver, Rapid Fire Cannon yet again, and then the Infinity Edge. With this build, you'll have a lot more crit chance and a bunch of attack damage, but not any lethality. It's still a really strong build in the late game, but it's not as good in the early and mid game. For your boot options, you have the Boots of Swiftness and the Ninja Tabbies. Since Jhin does lack mobility, I pretty much always go for the Boots of Swiftness, but if you're against a very high AD team, then the Ninja Tabbies are pretty decent. For my item pool, I first have the Infinity Edge. Yes, the crit build already has one, so we're ignoring it in that scenario, but for the lethality build, it's a very strong buy. It's a really strong item with your passive, so I'll pretty much buy it all the time, regardless of which build I go for. Next, I have the Guardian Angel. This is a really strong defensive pickup since you can come back to life in the later stages of the game, and it can make a massive difference. Now you could always get a static shiv over the rapid fire cannon if you did prefer, but I definitely think the rapid fire cannon is a much better buy. Either way, it is viable. Next up we have our armor penetration items in the LDR and the Mortal Reminder. I'll basically always go for an LDR regardless of what build I go for, but if I do need the Grievous Wounds, then of course I pick up the Mortal Reminder instead. You'll want to pick it up when you're against healing abusing champions like Soraka, Swain, or Mundo. Next, you've got all of your lifesteal itims in the Mercurial Scimitar, Bloodthirster, and the Death's Dance. The Mercurial Scimitar is definitely my favorite of the bunch because of the built-in QSS to break crowd controls, but Bloodthirster is also awesome, and so is Death's Dance. With a lethality build, I'd usually take the Bloodthirster, but in the crit full build, if you want to hit that 40% CDR, you could get the Death's Dance. For my lethality full build, I'll take the lethality core, get the Boots of Swiftness, and then finish it off with an Infinity Edge and the LDR. You'll have an absolute ton of penetration, but you're also going to do some massive damage. With this full build, you can two-shot squishy targets rather easily. For the crit full build, you take that crit core and then add the Boots of Swiftness yet again, and an LDR, and a Guardian Angel. This build's really nice because you have that extra space for the Guardian Angel, and it's also going to do a massive amount of damage in the late game. You're also going to never run out of mana, and you're going to have a lot of cooldown reduction because of the Essence Reaver, and also do a massive amount of damage. And that's all I've got for Season 7 Jhin. Don't forget to check out the video description below for a link to all of my social medias. I do also have a Discord server, so if you do need any additional help or you just want to hang out, then please feel free to join. We have a lot of people in there, and a lot of them love to help anybody who needs it. I also have a second Let's Play channel, so if you enjoy Let's Plays, please also check out my second channel. But other than that, thank you guys so much for checking out the video. I really do appreciate it, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you guys in the next one. Take it easy, and peace.
Going